Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Marine resource management is an interesting kind of debate for the Bahamas. And it becomes even more interesting when we're dealing with something that is a part of our culinary tradition, something that is a part of our heritage, and that is conch. Conch is one of the most lucrative marine resources in the Bahamas, and it's lucrative throughout the Caribbean. And one thing about it is that it's easily harvestable. It's not difficult to catch like spiny lobster, although the value between those species are quite less, and it's something that Benny and Tufik really looked at. But if we look throughout the Caribbean and we see what really is going on, a lot of different countries have had a series of closures, closure in terms of export or different issues in terms of marine resource management for conch. And you see it in Dominican Republic, you see it in Haiti, we've seen it in Venezuela in 1991, we've seen it in Florida Keys for about 6 years, and during that closure, there has been an increase in stock, and I think now they have a temporary closure every year, and also in Honduras. Now, conch is said to be valued at about approximately $5 million during 2012. But what is interesting about this is that some of the data, all of the data has not been collected, so you cannot really collect the data from the much smaller fleets, which makes it kind of difficult. And as a result of its overexploitation, it's been placed on CITES Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species, Appendix 2. But my purpose here today is to really look at the environmental effects and how fishing pressure impacts different fishing grounds. And that really has to do with the depth range. And the main goal of this research here was determining how selective fishing impact conch maturity and to provide regulatory information to the government of the Bahamas, which can inform decision-making in fisheries within the archipelago. Now, there have been a lot of different literature written, starting off from Johnny Randall, who really sums it up way back from, I think, about 1964. But Stoner kind of sums it up well when he says the natural abundance of conch within the Bahamas has declined due to overfishing, and that sums it up great. But the thing is, the different environment determines how quick they reach maturity, and it's estimated to reach maturity at 3 to 3.5 years. However, different areas may reach maturity at different stages. And Stoner also estimated that 15 mm would be a good criteria that would address the lack of uniformity in catch. But in my research, I discovered that 15.5 would also be good, which double pins on what he was suggesting in 2012. Now, as I said, different environmental factors, yearly daylight variation, photo period, temperature, food availability, and ecological interaction all affects lip thickness, as well as foraging, sediment organics, and hydrology. If we look at Puerto Rico, it was said that 18 mm would be maturity, in Barbados 19 mm. And Colombia is an interesting type of situation in that before they had a weight restriction, and then there was a 5 mm restriction, but after their study, they discovered that 13.5 was the size of maturity, which means that all along they've been over-harvesting their conch in Colombia. Interesting enough, I discovered a few things in my research, and what Theile O'Neill really sheds light on it, and he says, once conch are undisrupted, and it's said that we have pockets of conch that are undisrupted in the Bahamas as well. Once conch are undisrupted, they will mate continuously at a 1-to-1 ratio, which is a positive thing, and especially during the month of June, and especially during those summer months. Kala et al. Says that during those summer months, or the rainy season, they mate at about 36%, which is the highest, ferociously. But Benny and Tufik's study really shed a different type of light on the socioeconomic aspect of why we're kind of seeing less conch in much shallower waters, because it's much easier to catch, and it's something that people have been suggesting for quite some time. Now, the methodology of this research is kind of different. You know, my data was acquired from the Department of Marine Resources as a result of their study, and they were really trying to find out how they could use the weight to determine the lip thickness, which is a little different than what I'm trying to figure out here. And they let the fishermen go to 6 different locations and freely catch what they would normally catch. So it's not like you're going with a transect and you're collecting something that's scientific. You're collecting what you normally collect. So the researchers, us, we can really see how the fisheries is being impacted, and that was a sample size of 315. As well as I was also given the data from 2005 to 2010, which we will also look at further on. But The conch was collected via free diving method. Electronic calipers were used to measure the lip. Electronic scales were also used to measure the weight. And the sex was observed by looking at the verge or the groove. Now, here's the map here of the 6 different locations. So you have Manawa Channel with a depth range of 33 feet plus. You have Upper Samphire and Lower Samphire. Now, these 2 locations that are shaded here, these locations have the same depth range of about 16 to 18. South Long Island was about from 6 to 16, and Memory Rock was 18 to 30. Now, what is interesting about this depth here, and I'll show it in a different slide, the more the depth increased, the larger the conch size was. So the more likely it would be sexually mature. So it comes in when you look at when you integrate the socioeconomic aspect, it kind of makes sense. If you have to go deeper, you have to use gas, you have to use a compressor, you increase your effort. And even when you increase your effort, you might not increase your yield all that well. So here's the slide. If we look in the middle, Manawa Channel has the greatest depth, 33 feet plus, in the middle in the red, right? Right behind that is Memory Rock. Memory Rock also has a greater lip thickness. And if you look at this line here, 15, this is where we want it to be. This is what Stoner suggested in 2012, and this is also what I've discovered in my research that I will talk about in the next slide. Now, Lower Samphire is a really interesting kind of situation here. It's the least amount of depth, it's close to a localized fishing community, and it's way below what we would want it to be. If you look at that, the thickness of the lip is about 12.5, which is way below what it should be. And South Long Island, as well as Upper Samphire, is still below that margin of 15 mm. Here, to really understand what the entire sample was saying, I had to really look at the spread and place it in a box plot here. And what it's saying is that because there was no uniformity allowed in catch, fishermen caught from about 3 mm to about 33 mm, which is an interesting type of situation, which means that you're collecting very, very immature conch in between here. Very, very immature conch in that sample. And you also have some very, very large ones, but those ones really mainly came from Manawa Channel, the location with the greatest depth. And here is my 15.5, what I'm talking about, and it's right above what Stoner suggested. And it's an interesting type of situation because catch in the Bahamas has no uniformity, and that's something that I really wanted to address in this research and really try to tackle and drive home. So if we look at the spread for Lower Samphire kind of has the largest spread. However, most of that spread is below that 15 mm. So most of the species there are below sexual maturity. And you see a similar kind of relationship for Upper Samphire. However, Manawa Channel has the smallest spread, but most of the species at Manawa Channel are largest. And it's really showing you that, illustrating that kind of relationship of between depth and sexual maturity. This slide here illustrates the relationship with weight and lip thickness. And as we can see, the weight, the larger the lip, the greater the weight. This location here is Manawa Channel. This location here is Memory Rock. Now, this is the graph I was telling you about earlier. And it shows that range, that decrease from 2005 to 2010 in lip thickness. So it was right above 15, and throughout the years, the lip thickness at Porterski actually declined. So, as I mentioned earlier, my research double-pinned on Stoner's research and argument that maybe 15 mm is the way to go. And I also discovered the idea of optimal foraging, trying to maximize landing while simultaneously minimizing effort. And this was something that Bini and Tufik talk about, and this is something that is seen within the fishermen, but quite too often we forget about the socioeconomic aspect and the human aspect. We kind of look at the science a lot more, but that was something I was trying to cover. And Manawa Channel and Memory Rock illustrates the capability and may have the capability of colonizing more shallow and encroached locations. One, because As I mentioned earlier, once undisrupted, they can mate continuously. So in my conclusion, there must be some form of uniformity in terms of lip thickness. More studies must be developed. There must be more financial resources. And my fourth thing here is understanding the fisherman to fleet dynamics. And this is something Hilborn talked about in 1985. And it's something that we kind of forgot about. We kind of, at Department of Marine Resources and other agencies, sometimes look at fisheries from a monofisheries standpoint, and they forget about the human interaction. And that is something that needs to be done, as well as more stock assessments. Thank you very much, guys.